What's up, and welcome back into Please Bear With Me. I'm your host, Scotty Swingler, and we did just watch, as I'm sure many of you did, the Baylor men's basketball team lose in pretty alarming fashion to Duke in the second round of the NCAA tournament. This is a football podcast. I've made that clear to anybody I've talked to. I follow Baylor football so much more closely than I follow basketball. I'm way more able to talk about football, but I'm definitely a down year for Scott Drew's team. We know they'll be back and reload better than ever. Already some exciting transfer news for them. Trying to root these girls on through as it was a tight one before we jumped on here live. But we're here to talk about Baylor football on World Bear Day is today. World Bear Day. And with that, I bring in my co-host, one of the great World Bears of all time, Terrence Ganaway, 2011 Alamo Bowl MVP. How's it going, bro?
Scotty, I did not know it was World Bear Day. I usually get all kinds of notifications on my phone for these weird national days. I guess when it relates to food, because I'm a foodie, so I know when National Pancake Day is. But listen, I am glad to be back. Baylor basketball started out really well, and you could just tell the depth, the size, the precision shooting from Duke just was tough to watch. But I know you said it. I'll say it too. This is football podcast. But the girls are 2 minutes away from having a chance to punch their ticket in the Sweet 16 as well. So
let's go.
Sick embarrassed. I'm glad to join you as I am every week. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Yes, sir, and I am wearing my 2021 National Championship shirt. Just a reminder to our friends at Duke, we do have a more recent national championship. I know they've got multiple, so I can't talk too much smack about basketball to Duke people, but I did want to wear the National Championship shirt because we've still got that one. Hey, a couple show notes real quick. Hey, Bear the Truth, glad you're here, man. Welcome in. By the way, I think you won something this week. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Couple show notes here real quick. We are going to announce the winners of the first round of our March Madness bracket. Remember, we are running a March Madness bracket of all-time Baylor football players. I have the results in front of me. Terrence has them as well. We'll show you those and banter about that a little bit today. We are going to do another giveaway here in a little bit. We have 66 subscribers, which, considering we just launched this thing a couple weeks ago, not bad. I'll be honest. I think we can get a few more. I would love to see us get that number to 3 digits, at least in the next couple weeks. So if you've enjoyed the show so far, invite your friends, your family, any other Baylor fans in your life to subscribe. I tried to put out some clips from our show last week that might be interesting. I've got a few more in the tank working. We'll keep posting content throughout the week. And the more you can not only subscribe but like and comment. I know that's that annoying YouTuber thing, but it really does help us get in front of more people and hopefully grow this thing to where we want it to be. So appreciate you very much. Terrence, we revealed these 64 names a couple weeks ago. We had the big comeback show. It was kind of chaotic up here in the Alico building, 4 of us in studio. Before we reveal the results of the first round of voting, any final words on that initial field of contestants?
You know, I said it last week. If you don't vote, you can't argue with the results. But there are some upsets here, and I think a lot of that is primacy recency. You know, what people remember, what they felt like, especially if they've gone to school in the last 10 to 15 years and what they know as success. But I know there are some old heads that are legacy all-time Baylor greats that had won in man, alarming fashion, like Duke beat us earlier today. But man, I think for everyone that was in this field of play, they all are considered Baylor greats in their right, and there were several that were left off, as we mentioned last week. But I'm excited about as we progress forward. I'm hoping I made it to the next round, the round of 32, but I know I'm up against a tall task in Robert Griffin being in my quadrant as well.
Well, let's go ahead and move into these results. And by the way, I feel good about the way we put this bracket together in that as I'm looking down this page of results, there are some lopsided results, but I think there are way more of these that are close, that were competitive, 60-40, 50-50 kind of votes rather than blowouts even across the field. So the first field where we will reveal the results is our hits region. Again, that's linebackers and safeties. These are what the results look like. If you can't see all those graphics, we'll go through the new matchups one by one. Mike Singletary does have a large margin of victory to defeat Clay Johnston. In a minor upset, Terrell Bernard beats Mike Welch, a 9 seed beating an 8. We saw Baylor basketball do that this past week. And so Terrell Bernard will face Mike Singletary in the next round. Joe Pavelec edges out Bryce Hager. James Francis beats Orion Stewart by what I think was literally like 2 votes. Like, that was a crazy close competitive matchup, but James Francis moves on. Thomas Everett edges out Eddie Lackey, who also played him close. Taylor Young with the upset, the 10 seed defeating a 7 seed Van McElroy. And then just below that, Jalen Petrie moves on comfortably by Ahmad Dixon. And I will tell you, Terrence, Jordan Lake had the lead on Robert Blackman almost every time I checked the survey. And then when I pulled the final results, Blackman had just gotten it done there in the closing hour. So here are our second round matchups in the hits region. You've got Mike Singletary, the 1 seed, taking on Terrell Bernard. Terrence, these are like almost 2 generations of the same player. I know Bernard does not, I mean, it's hard to put anybody in the same league as Mike Singletary, but you think about the captain, the guy who's gone on to NFL success. I mean, Terrell Bernard just signed a huge contract with the Buffalo Bills. Really 2 legacy middle linebackers here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Mike Singletary, from the first we had the Alico building, he's probably a lock to be in the Final Four, maybe, win this whole tournament. Bernard was just a phenomenal player for us. He doesn't have the accolades and the stats that Mike Singletary had at Baylor. But, I mean, he is a key and integral part of that Bills defense now. And they locked him up for the next several years and paid him handsomely. So, great players. You hate when we get to this part. I think this is much more challenging than the NCAA tournament, because I don't have any personal ties to any of these athletes. I mean, any of those teams. I just want my bracket to win so I can win $200 every year. But
right.
I know Terrell Bernard. I know Mike Singletary and what their legacy means to Baylor. And it hurts that somebody has to lose, but that's the name of the game. And it's going to be a great matchup. But I think Mike Singletary is a lock to move forward.
Yeah, I think so too. But, you were talking about how, and we'll see more of this, by the way, in the speed region the most, how there's some recency bias going on. You just imagine with an online poll like this, there's probably going to be a few more younger guys getting in on it than the older guys. And so, I would be shocked if Singletary doesn't win, but also, if you get enough dudes that went to Baylor in the last 10 years that just want to vote for the guy they've watched play, it wouldn't surprise me if Bernard sneaks up, but we'll have to see. The 2 seed Thomas Everett takes on the 10 seed Taylor Young. I got a little low-key flack, I don't think from you, TG, but from a couple others, for putting Taylor Young in this tournament at all. And what I said is, man, bottom line for me is I think he's arguably a first-team all-time linebacker for Baylor, right up there with Singletary and Pavelec as far as numbers, a 4-year starter, someone who is disruptive. I was kind of pleased. Van McElroy's a good legacy name, played for a long time in the NFL. I was kind of pleased to see Taylor Young move into this matchup.
Yeah, Taylor Young was Matt Rule talks about him being a true leader on his team that 1-11 season. He's seen the height. He won a couple of championships, and then all of it fall off in 2016, and then the rebuilding or the foundation year in 2017. Taylor Young is a great in his own right, undersized, had a ton of heart and a ton of grit, which is why he's on this list. And then obviously we know Thomas Everett and why he's a 2 seed. But this matchup looks interesting, and I think we're probably going to run into some promising recency here as well.
Agreed. Number 3 seed Petrie moves on to face Robert Blackman here in a second round matchup. Again, Blackman, a guy that was a ball hawking safety, more of a true pass coverage safety, playing behind James Francis, forcing a lot of turnovers in his time. Meanwhile, Petrie, that kind of do it all star, was the name of his position for a couple seasons there. Line up in the nickel, line up at the line of scrimmage, linebacker, safety. Just a legend in every way. Terrence, I said a couple weeks ago I wouldn't be surprised if Petrie actually sneaks out of this region as the winner, just because of recency bias, as well as, I mean, the one who stayed legacy for Petrie, and then being a nationally relevant player at the end of his career, really make him one of one to me.
Yeah, it looks like, Robert Blackman went out and he campaigned better than Jordan Lake last week, and got the nod to get move forward. I really thought it was going to be Lake that had this round. However, what you said about Petrie, I just mentioned what Taylor Young meant to Matt Rule. Petrie means everything to Matt Rule as well, and I mean what he was able to do that last year. And there's so much lore and fandom over Petrie. I mean, he's the guy that could have went anywhere else, could have dropped out, but he stayed. He was the glue and the backbone of that team that won the championship several years ago. And, there's a lot of people that love Petrie and his number 8. And, he was the reason why some of those single digit numbers were so much of a hit for Matt Rule.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, we're going to talk in a minute about some of the guys on this spring roster we're excited about for Baylor this season. And I did notice when they put out the lineups and the rosters again yesterday, Aranda has kind of quietly kept that single-digit tradition going. I think the players were really behind that the first couple years, but seeing it continue even this far into Aranda's tenure, I think speaks highly of Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie, those guys who kind of set that legacy way back then. And then the final matchup that we'll have remaining in the hits region, the 4 and 5 seeds, Joe Pavelic and James Francis, just two of the best linebackers in school history at a school that could be considered linebacker U in a lot of senses. Pavelic, the second leading tackler in school history, just a stalwart player in a darker era of Baylor football. And then James Francis, again, NCAA record for most blocked kicks in a season, just one of those random stats that will wow you about his game. Also a basketball player for Baylor. That seems relevant today. I'm really intrigued to see how fans vote this one, TG.
Yeah, so very tough matchup. I got to play with Joe Paul, and then I got to play alongside both James Francis' sons, Chris and James, one at University of Houston and one at Baylor. Just a phenomenal family, legacy of hitters and people that know football and has a nose for the ball. It's going to be a tough one, man. I'm glad I don't have to vote today and have to think about it. I get the week to kind of ponder on this, but man, this is going to be a tough matchup. Much love for both of them. But when you think about Joe Paul and how he left it all on the field in a very dark era, I mean, look at the blood on his jersey now in this screenshot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much who he is and what he always represented of being a hard-nosed football player that played at a high level and was very consistent for Baylor in a very tough time.
So one more time, here's that hits region after all the votes are in. So we will move next week into our Sweet 16. We'll see which of these guys move on. Next, let's take a look at how the votes fell for the big men region. Andrew Billings wins going away over Connor Galvin. Not a surprise there, number 1 overall seed. Bill Glass moves on to face him in the second round. Daniel Sepulveda takes care of business pretty easily against J.D. Walton. Also not a huge surprise. Spencer Drango wins going away against Aubrey Scholes. Again, Aubrey Scholes, one of the oldest players in this field. I'm sure a lot of folks voting here didn't even get to see him play. I had trouble even finding a picture of him playing football, but certainly worthy of inclusion in this tournament. Jason Smith and Cyril Richardson win their matchups pretty easily. No surprise there. 2 All-Americans will face off. James Lynch moves on over Phil Taylor. And then in the surprise of this region, Sean Oakman gets 51% of the vote and moves on over Santana Dotson. And this is the first place, TG, Sean Oakman moving on to face James Lynch, where I really feel like, the fans can't be wrong, but I think they got that one wrong just a little bit.
I couldn't agree more. I love Sean Oakman, his physical presence, and ability to force offenses, the scheme around him was just phenomenal, and it allowed players to make plays on other ends of the ball. But I felt like Santana Dotson was going to get that nod. Here in this matchup, James Lynch is a very decorated, if not one of the most decorated defensive linemen in Baylor's history. I think he moves on without a problem. Nothing against Sean Oakman. I think he still looks like that today, but I think James Lynch is the favorite to move forward.
I think so too. And remember, James Lynch broke Oakman's. I believe Oakman set the sack record in a Baylor career, and Lynch broke it and broke it easily. Like Lynch holds that record big now. So just in a 1-to-1 comparison, James Lynch certainly a more dominant player, and I think is still in the NFL as well. I think he's still hanging around some rosters in the NFL. Again, those other matchups in this region as we move forward, Andrew Billings will take on Bill Glass. Remember, I put up that graphic a couple weeks ago. Bill Glass was the school's first unanimous All-American. So I know he played in like the 50s. He played for the Cleveland Browns for a long time. It's hard to compare eras when you talk about size and speed and skill wise. But I mean, two legends here worthy of this second round matchup.
Andrew Billings is going to win this. No one that we know closely will remember Bill Glass, and this is going to be all over. With Billings winning this. Obviously, he's the number 1 seed. Bill Glass did a lot of great things for Baylor. It's just, if you're a football historian, Baylor historian, you would know how big and the reverence we'll have for Bill Glass. But Andrew Billings is going to win this one, and I think it'll be a landslide.
Yeah, totally. I think we're going to get an upset in this matchup, to be honest with you. And I don't even know if we can call it an upset. Just the way the seeding fell, the way I arranged this. Jason Smith, number 2 seed. He was the highest draft pick ever for Baylor at number 2 overall. Obviously, a couple years later, RG3 matched that. But Cyril Richardson was also a unanimous All-American. So these are two really, there's a reason they're the 2 and the 6 seed for offensive or defensive linemen. These are arguably 2 of your 3, if not your 2 best offensive linemen of all time squaring up. And I think Cyril Richardson, both with slightly more recently a guy that played for Baylor as well as his accomplishments, might walk away with this one.
I think so too. Both are great people. I played with Cyril, and I loved him as a person. Jason Smith would come back and work out with us, but our time did not overlap at Baylor. Cyril was a young guy and was a steady leader and core of our offensive line in 2011, and he only got better from there. So I think he's going to win this one. But Jason Smith, there's a lot of people that love him too.
And here's where this big men region gets so fun to me. So fun. This matchup right here. Again, Daniel Sepulveda, the greatest punter in school history, arguably the greatest punter in NCAA history. If you look at his numbers, his 2 Ray Guy awards, his accomplishments, going up against what I would rank as probably our greatest tackle, if not our second greatest, right after Jason Smith, and Spencer Drango. Drango, another All-American player. Terrence, I could see the fans going big either way. I could see this being dead even. I really have no idea how folks are going to vote. I know both of these players are beloved.
I mean, I think Sepulveda should have been in the hits region. But both of these players are coveted by Baylor. I think Sepulveda has more of the draw from the fan base. But obviously we know how great Spencer Drango is, and I mean he's always a joy to have on here as well. Man, it's going to be tough. I think Daniel Sepulveda is going to win this one.
Man, wouldn't surprise me, but again, no idea how that's going to go. So we will have to see. Again, you will have to vote on this. We will put the voting link up again. 8 a.m. tomorrow is when voting will open. We'll have that link here on YouTube as well as on my Twitter page. Please bear W_me. We'll make sure to get that link out so everyone can vote. Let's look real quickly at the speed region. Here's who moves on. And Terrence, this is where I think you could really see the recency bias at play big time. Some huge upsets in this region. Corey Coleman does move on over Dominique Ziegler. Kendall Wright moves on over Tevin Reese in actually what was the most lopsided matchup of this round. But then the rest of the matchups were very close, and there's a lot of upsets. So Ray Crockett does move on over Larry Elkins, two older names there. Gary Baxter upsets Melvin Bonner. That vote was very close. Katie Cannon moves on over Gerald McNeil. And I have some words about that, but I'll save them for just a second. Terrence Williams does defeat Reggie Newhouse. And then two upsets on the other side here where you see the 13 defeating the 4. Xavier Howard moves on over Gary Green. And Denzel Mims moves on over Ron Francis. And I think, Terrence, that's not just a case of recency bias, but also I think people, are colored a little bit by Xavier Howard's success in the NFL. The fact of the matter is Gary Green's numbers were way better in college, despite Xavier Howard having a stellar pro career since.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think when I look back at Baylor, Demetri Goodson was really good as a corner for us, played for a little bit with the Green Bay Packers. I don't even know if his name was on the snub list, but a very reliable, steady corner for us. And man, when you think about Gary Green and Ron Francis and what they meant to these programs at their time here at Baylor, it's surprising. But yes, we're looking at this through multiple lenses. I almost feel like you could have done a 1990s to current tournament bracket, but obviously you will leave off all-time greats. And I think you will get a little bit more honest, actual objective answering. But right now this looks very subjective drawing, and that's the name of the game. That's why there's a poll out there to go vote.
That's right. Well, here's what we got going in. So now you've got Corey Coleman against Ray Crockett. I do expect Corey Coleman to win this one pretty easily. Ray Crockett, though, look up his tape. Playmaker, NFL baller, like outstanding player at Baylor, turnover forcer. But Corey Coleman, of course, Biletnikoff Award winner, one of the most dynamic athletes we've ever seen with the ball in his hands. In a matchup here, Kendall Wright will take on Gary Baxter. Now, this would have been fun, Terrence, if Gary Baxter was 10 years younger. To see these two dudes actually go up against each other would have been a lot of fun. Gary Baxter was a special player in the early 2000s, and then obviously we know what Kendall Wright was.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how I feel about Kendall Wright. He's a great teammate, great player, great friend, and I can't wait to race him in this fall. But Gary Baxter, if these two were to have practiced and played against each other every day for 4 years, who knows what they could have truly accomplished at Baylor. But obviously very decorated individuals that played at a high level during their time in Waco. I think Kendall's going to win this just because when you think of who was more sensational, you got to give the nod to the offensive guy.
Big time. Then Terrence Williams and Katie Cannon, different players in a lot of senses, but also similar players, both kind of burner guys who made their living off deep balls in their time at Baylor. Williams, obviously, with a pretty good NFL career there for a while with the Dallas Cowboys. This is where, Terrence, I think if I had to pick one result that I was most in disagreement with the fans, I would say Cannon moving on over Gerald McNeil was really disappointing. Not only when you think about what Gerald McNeil was and the era in which he put up the numbers he put up, which was the 80s, he put up awesome numbers, but also the dude was 5'6" and played in the NFL for 5 seasons. making plays, returning touchdowns in the NFL. Gerald McNeil was, and so I was really shocked to see Cannon move on. But who knows? Maybe he's got a fan base voting for him. Maybe he'll challenge T. Will here.
Yeah, I think those Chrome Domes helped them move forward. But this is going to be really interesting matchup. I think Terrence Williams, especially the nod Robert Griffin gave him when you said you had caught up and listened to something on another show, but
the 365 Sports,
yeah. So Terrence Williams, I played with him. The guy never ate a regular meal. He ate ice cream for breakfast. I don't know how he was able to perform at the level he was able to perform at, but he was so consistent. I left in 2011, and then he just backdoored that a really good year in 2011 with Nick Florence is a great quarterback. I'm not taking anything from Nick Florence, but him and Nick Florence really had a special connection, which I think was even better than the connection that he and Terrence Williams and Robert Griffin had together.
And then finally in this region, you've got the two upsets that moved on. Xavier Howard taking on Denzel Mims. Man, when you talk about guys that could make a play on the football, Terrence, these are two of the best Baylor's ever had.
Yeah, I agree. Big players on both sides of the ball. Man, I don't think I can vote for this right now. I would have to look and kind of go back and do some studying of which one had the most impactful plays to win games. And, just off the top of my head, I would think that would go to Denzel Mims and just what he meant for us and how big of a player he was down in the red zone and just making contested catches after contested catches. Man, this is going to be a tough one. I don't want to vote for it yet.
Yeah, it's tough, but I think here's what I think, and I think this goes back to something Bartlemay said a couple weeks ago about Denzel Mims. Xavier Howard was a great player on some great Baylor football teams.
Correct.
Denzel Mims was arguably the best player on some good Baylor football teams that he helped make great. Like, I feel like Denzel's play elevated his team, especially in some big moments, big games, big catches, right? More so than Xavier. And that's not taking anything away from Xavier Howard. Again, the dude has had just like an lights out NFL career since leaving Baylor. And I think Michael shared with you guys when we were up here, I saw his first spring at Baylor. I was a student and I went to spring practice and I watched him practice one time and went back to my apartment and said, guys, Xavier Howard's going to be a star. It was one of the few times I've called it and just nailed it. I was like, that dude is 6'3", he's fast, and he just sees the football.
He's instinctive. He's a great player. He's played and covered some really great athletes in the NFL. Man, he's special. So like I said, I think I would have to go back and review some of the impact plays that each of them made while they're at Baylor to figure out, which one is the best in the context of this bracket and tournament. But, man, it's going to be a hard one. For me, that's the hardest so far.
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, one more region to go. Here's how our results fell for the backfield region. Robert Griffin does move on over Sawyer Robertson as if there was any doubt. Congratulations, Terrence Ganaway. You defeated Cody Carlson by about a score of 3-1, very comfortably there in the margin. Moving on over Commander Cody, but you will have to face RG3 next, which we know you've said from the top will be a tall task. Don Truhl moves on over Alfred Anderson to face Seth Russell, who defeats Abram Smith. Walter Abercrombie had tied for the biggest margin of victory in this tournament, beating Tom Mickey, and he tied with Bryce Petty, who also had a huge margin of victory, defeating Ronnie Bull. Again, Ronnie Bull, one of those guys that played so long ago, none of us watched him play, but on the pages of Baylor history for a reason. Obviously, Bryce Petty, with his championships, someone who moved on easily. And then Shock Linwood moves on fairly comfortably to face J.J. Joe, who just by a vote or two defeats Lake Seastrunk to move on in a minor upset there. So our matchups for this next week look like this. Terrence, you are facing off against your teammate, Alamo Bowl backfield dynamic duo there. You and Griff going up here in round 2.
Yeah, this is a tough matchup. Didn't get a good draw here, but win and advance, and that's what I did last week. I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna make sure people vote for me. What I do like is that Sawyer Robertson got a handful of votes. So there's some people out there that are looking and wanting upsets, and I hope they do it this week.
There we go. Interesting matchup here, Terrence. I think it's really hard, like we talked about, these guys that played so long ago, Don Truhl in the 50s, even though he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, that's why he's the 2 seed in this region. That's a big deal. I can't imagine most people voting for him over Seth Russell.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I think Seth Russell is going to get a lot of votes on what the perceived potential of him never being injured and how great he could have been.
Right.
But Don Truhl laid it out all on the line. He was the first ever person to make the Heisman ballot and get to. I think he finished second that year, and obviously Robert won the first Heisman for Baylor. But Seth Russell most likely is going to win this because of what people think what could have been.
Did you see those spider charts of all the quarterbacks since 2014 that came out?
Yeah, I saw some of them on X, but I didn't pay too close of attention to them. But it looked like Sawyer was really good on that.
Okay, so we need to do this maybe next week or the week after. We'll make this one of our topics in a coming episode. If you look at those spider graphs, it's fascinating way to compare Baylor quarterbacks. I think it only goes back to 14 or maybe even 15. I think it's 14 is when they start. So Petty's second year, but Seth Russell's 2015, and not a surprise to anyone, is like a perfect circle. It's just like 90th percentile on everything. Like, that's what we're talking about when we say Seth Russell, like, what could it have been, right? The perceived greatness, like, could he have been a Heisman finalist? Could that team have won a national championship? I think most Baylor fans feel like, yes, probably. So that's what we're talking about when we say he's got the leg up maybe on Don Truhl. Terrence, I think this is the most compelling matchup in this round. Bryce Petty going up against Walter Abercrombie, because if there's any name that all Baylor fans do know from any era, it is Walter. Outstanding legacy player. I think you, as a Baylor running back great, might say the standard bearer for Baylor running backs all time. And going up against the only 2-time championship quarterback, at least for Big 12 championships that I know of, that's Bryce Petty, who just like commanded those 2013 and 2014 offenses with such precision. I am really fascinated to see how fans vote here, because the other thing, both of these guys have all of the goodwill with the fans.
Absolutely. Walter stayed so relevant with the program for so long, being ahead of the B Association. I mean, he is known by every generation of Baylor Bears that came after him. Players that, we were in the locker room after games and we saw Walter walk in, giving us words of encouragement, patting us on the back when we won. I mean, he was so instrumental in just even hiring Matt Rule. I mean, he was on a flight to Temple, to Philadelphia.
That's right. I forgot about that.
To visit him. I mean, he was so great at helping Matt Rhodes get, assimilated to Baylor. And obviously that doesn't mean anything about what he was like as a player, but that is why so many people like him. And I think, Bryce Petty slips on the proverbial, banana peel like he did against Oklahoma State that one year. And he loses this matchup.
That's cold, bruh. I like not, your take that Walter gets out of this one is not a bad take, but going back, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm sorry to take you there.
Do you remember that I've told you this before, but it's been a while. I was in the front row on that goal line. I was sitting on that goal line in the front row when he slips right there. And I literally, and all of us did, I looked at my buddies and was like, we'll hand it to Shock Linwood and we'll be fine. Next play, fumble, everybody knows the rest. That cost us a national title shot. Oh, brutal. You had to bring that up on the same day we lost to Duke so bad in the basketball tournament. The final matchup in the round of 32. We've gone through all of them except this one. Shock Linwood, the school's all-time leading rusher, goes up against J.J. Joe, who just barely beat out Lake Seastrunk. Now, this is an interesting matchup because it's really hard, Terrence, to compare, an all-time great running back with your all-time kind of veer, like, J.J. Joe, the moxie. I still have not found the clip I want to show of J.J. Joe. There's a highlight out there somewhere where he fakes a handoff. He puts the ball behind his back. Here, I'm going to let the camera see me. He fakes the handoff. He puts the ball behind his back like this, and he stares down like a blitzing linebacker who's coming right at his face mask. And right as he gets just like jacked, he just flips the ball like this behind his back to like the receiver coming around on a reverse. It's like the sickest highlight I've ever seen. Just BA is all get out. But Shock Linwood and JJ Joe, that's another one where you've almost got, Terrence, just to be honest, like opposites, I think, in that J.J. Joe, obviously with his recent passing, has been so well remembered and is so beloved by fans, has stayed involved with Baylor through his work with, as the radio analyst, whereas Shock Linwood kind of left under some unfortunate circumstances. I think is actually probably misremembered by fans more poorly than he should be because of how things ended. So, but you can't deny like the record and you can't deny the numbers, right? And he did beat Treston Ebner, by the way, by about 72% to 28% in the first round. So obviously people are putting respect on Shock's name too.
Yeah, Shock was such a steady workhorse for Baylor for 4 years. And I talked to Art Browse after all of the stuff kind of just fell apart, and he truly believed that if he was still around that year, that 2016 year, that Shock would have been in a much healthier mental state. And when you think about all the players and everyone kind of dealt with it alone and differently, media talking about everybody on Baylor's football team as this type of person. I was ashamed to even tell people I played football during that time and under our brows. And it was just, it was a very, very tough time. And I think more so than anyone, we got to see how bad it was to Shock from the stands, not only in the locker room, but a lot of that stuff where he posted a snapshot of him packing it, Snapchat of him packing his locker during the week and trying to, keep it in-house. And so it was a tough time for Shock. All-time great. You cannot take anything from him. I think if he's healthy that year mentally, he sets that record and he puts it so far out of reach that it is never touchable. But it just wasn't that year for him. And then, J.J. Joe was such a great, fantastic leader and a person that we want to remember and cherish his spirit. I thought it was an upset that he beat Lake. But it makes sense that people kind of want to give his final send-off and nod as like, hey, we appreciate everything you did. You were great to Baylor now, and you will always be great to Baylor. And so I think that I'm not surprised at this, but I think Shock moves forward. But J.J. Joe was still, we want to remember him the best way possible. And I think that's how fans chose to do so.
Good stuff. So those are our first round results. Obviously, those will be the longest results we'll have to rattle off as every week these will start getting shorter and shorter. We'll have more and more time to kind of, bathe in what these guys were and talk about how great they were. And as we get to these better and better matchups as we move on. Terrence, I'll give you one more shot, as I kind of gave everybody a couple weeks ago. Why should people vote for Terrence Ganaway to upset Robert Griffin III this week?
I think it was really the run game. If you look at Baylor and what Baylor has been able to do successfully over the past decade, 15 years under our brows, and obviously Matt Rule and now Randa, when we run the ball effectively, it takes a ton of pressure off the offensive line and it takes a ton of pressure off the quarterback. I think the running backs benefit greatly from that as well. But even though it was a short, one impactful season, I made the best of it. I competed every day, much like our Robert Griffin and the rest of the team. But when you look at the person that was the most courageous, willing to lay it down on the line every week, it was Terrence Ganaway over Robert Griffin. One, because I wasn't as athletic, so I had to physically lay it down. Robert could just skate by because he's so athletic. He could have played basketball. I mean, football was my only thing. He could have ran track. So I was just more dedicated to the sport than Robert. So that, to be honest, it's not even a question of whether I should be the one in the Final Four. But Robert is going to have a lot of people, rooting for him. He has his number retired, framed in the locker room. I just want people to understand that if it wasn't for me, if he handed the ball off more, I would have won the Heisman. And I brought home the East Texas Heisman from the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah,
it's right here in my house. So, Robert doesn't have an Alamo Bowl MVP trophy. I know that.
There we go. Hey, Terrence Ganaway making his best case. We love it. We love it. Good job, TG. All right. Hey, really quickly, want to let you know that I did send out an open invitation last week. I know that there's not a lot of people watching these live streams yet, but I said, hey, we're doing another giveaway. We did a giveaway last week from our sponsors at Dichotomy. I said, hey, we'll do another giveaway from my friends at Fabled. I've got this Fabled mug. It's got a $25 gift card in it. That's enough to go buy your favorite book from my favorite bookstore here in Waco. You need to go check out Fabled. And I said, if you comment on any of our videos this week, you'll enter a drawing to win. And I'll be honest, I got 2 comments on the YouTube channel this week. One was a troll telling me I was an idiot, which was funny. I gave him a friendly response. And the other was our friend Brian, Bear the Truth. So, hey, Bear the Truth, I'm going to send you this Fabled mug and a $25 gift card. Thanks for commenting. Really appreciate it. I would love it if we got more comments, more interactions this week. Dude, let's do this. We're not going to do a giveaway this week. This is a little bit of an abbreviated episode. I had kind of a crazy week in my personal life. I know Terrence is busy. Next week, we'll be back with a little bit more of a full show like we did the previous 2 weeks. We'll do another giveaway, and it's going to be if you share, please bear with me, on Twitter in the next couple weeks. If you share our channel or share one of our videos the next couple weeks, you can enter to win. We've got giveaways left coming up in the next couple weeks from Southern Roots and Primetime Pets. As you can see, the sponsors behind me. Would love for you to be involved. Thanks, by the way, to all of our sponsors. These are just folks that wanted to do giveaways to help me get the show relaunched. Friends of mine. Dichotomy is my favorite place to get a drink in Waco. Fabled, favorite place to buy a book. They also do great coffee. Primetime Pets. Dude, if you've got a cat or a dog and you want pet furniture that doesn't look like cheap plastic, you need to check out their website, primetimepets.com. And then Southern Roots Brewing, definitely my favorite brewery here in Waco. Great pizza as well. Big space, good place to take the family. I'm about to start some FC Dallas watch parties there at Southern Roots, I think. So if anybody happens to watch this and you also root for Dallas in Major League Soccer, reach out. Let's go to Southern Roots and watch some soccer together. I think we're going to start doing that this summer. Okay, enough about our sponsors. TG. We were talking a little bit ago about Baylor running backs, the legacy of Baylor running the football. Shock Linwood's record. I think if there's anybody who's got a shot at that record, and I don't think it's a good shot. Like, I think that record is pretty safe. But Bryson Washington did set the freshman rushing record for Baylor last season. Obviously, just an outstanding breakout year for him. What I wanted to do on today's show, despite or besides going over the tournament results, was looking at Baylor's offensive skill positions entering spring camp. I'm going to throw up kind of my projected depth chart here in a second, but I'll just tell you, like, I'm looking up and down these skill positions, guys we got in the portal, some of the best recruits we've gotten at some of these positions in a while, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know that I've been this excited about the depth, especially on the outside, since like late Art Briles era in terms of just raw talent. What do you think coming into the spring about any of these guys?
Well, I mean, if I look at the starters, I don't know if we have a tremendous amount of depth other than at running back position. I think Pendergrass and Bryson Washington did a really good job of complementing each other last year, and really both were hard nosed football runners who benefited from breaking tackles in the second and third level to have big plays. One of the things that I'm kind of still worried about is the receiver production. I mean, we have guys like Kobe Prentice coming along, but he was there at Alabama for 3 years. Obviously, we know about the sensational wide receiver Alabama had last year, in Ryan Williams, but everyone else was kind of, just another player. I mean, when they needed big plays, they went to Ryan Williams. And when I looked at the stats over his career at Alabama, he was very comparable to what Josh Cameron had last year as a wide receiver. Similar total in catches, 60 to 52 to Cameron. Very close in yardage. And Josh Cameron had twice the touchdowns last year than he had in a 3-year career at Alabama. So I'm curious to what Kobe Prentice actually brings to the roster. And I think it's probably elite speed, consistency from a leadership standpoint, because he's a 4-year senior. And I think work ethic in practice. If there's anything I know about Nick Saban, I think he demanded a lot out of his players. And I hope that he can push some of those younger players on the team that are going to be behind Prentice, I believe, to compete at a high level, because we're going to have to develop there. Another thing is getting Ashton Hawkins back. He's a big play threat for us last year. He made plays. He's really shifty, caught a lot of balls in traffic, and man, you can't replace that in 1 year. And I don't think Baylor had that on their roster anyways. You would have had to go get it from the portal. And then Josh Cameron. I mean, the guy plays team as a returner, and he makes consistent plays down after down. Most consistent player, I believe, the last year for Baylor, and he has been very consistent over his career. So when you think about that, we got a 6-year senior in Hawkins, we got a 4-year senior in Prentice, and then we have a very reliable, consistent senior in Josh Cameron. Those guys stay healthy, we have a shot to do something really special in the Big 12. After that, there's some guys that are still trying to crack the glass ceiling.
Yeah, so let me pull this up. I went ahead and drew up a projected. Now, we are at the top of spring camp. The first photos and practice coming out yesterday. So, we are very early on this. Baylor could put out something tomorrow that could rid all of this stupid. But this is my projection of what this depth chart is going to look like at the skill position. So, you just named, I think, the 3 starting receivers, Terrence. I think your three starters are Cameron and Prentice and Hawkins. I know there could be some, who's playing in the slot, who's playing outside. The way that Spavital has run these guys out, I don't actually think that matters a lot. I think they're going to line up different depending on the formation, but I've got Cameron, Hawkins, and Prentice as your top 3 receivers. Michael Trigg back at wide receiver, bro. Or at tight end. That's huge, man. I mean, I think we saw flashes of his potential this last season. If he could put it together, I think more consistently, that is a weapon, dude. That is a weapon catching the ball from that kind of H-back or tight end spot. And then at running back, you obviously have Bryson Washington, Dawson Pendergrass. I would think that your third running back in camp, because he's here early, is probably Caden Knighton, the really highly rated recruit out of Oklahoma. Number 1 running back out of Oklahoma, coming to Baylor. Remember that we have Michael Turner, an ESPN top 300 running back that will be here this fall. So you could have like 4 legitimate studs who are all getting carries at any point at running back. And then as far as some other guys to watch for at receiver here, that Cole Wilson is the name there that I have number 2 in the slot. That's the transfer we just got in from Texas State. It's very much like Ashton Hawkins 2.0, similar kind of production at Texas State that Hawkins had. You would think he'll be able to fill that role nicely. Jaden Porter's a guy that Aranda's really high on that they've been developing for a while. Taz Williams, the highly rated 4-star receiver coming in from Red Oak. He's here this spring, early enrollee. I think that gives him an advantage to play. That's why I've got him number 2 on that right side receiver. And then 2 other first-year players I think are important to watch. Ashton Jones, he's the 6'4" freshman who's also an early enrollee. And then Ja'Cory Watson, another freshman, highly rated 4-star talent at wide receiver. Lots of exciting new blood at receiver. But Terrence, when I'm looking at this, here's what I think more than anything. I think Josh Cameron needs to take one more step. I think what I want to see, I kind of think the comp for me for Josh Cameron is Antoine Goodley.
You only think that because it's his body type, but tell me more.
That's part of it. Yeah, like that's part of it. Like they're both like shorter, thicker guys than you think of as like your prototypical number 1 wideout. But the other thing is, I remember like Goodley kind of getting some of his early action as a returner, not a punt returner. He did more kick returns, but he was a return guy too. Cameron, obviously a lights out punt returner. I think could be an All-American at that spot next year if he keeps returning punts. And then, yeah, I think they are both guys who are really exciting run after the catch. I think Goodley was probably more of a vertical player, but I don't know how much of that was because that's who he was or that's just what Bryles did versus what Spavital likes to do with his receivers. Baylor didn't take a ton of vertical shots this past year despite having some explosive offensive plays. So I think I want to see, but I think when I think of Goodley, I think Goodley's best season, he had about 1,300 yards. I think that's kind of what Cameron needs to be aiming for is like 1,300, 1,350, double-digit touchdowns. Like I feel like that's what I want to see from Josh Cameron. And, I went through that whole depth chart and didn't even mention Sawyer Robertson, first time coming in as the unquestioned starter. Like year 2, you expect kind of that developmental jump. Man, I think I want to see Josh Cameron really elevate this season.
Well, I think he will be consistent if nothing else. But it all depends on what type of offense we field. I think last year with some of the underneath routes that we had, we had a wheel concept that we really tried to exploit several times throughout the season. A lot of those balls went to Hawkins, Monterey Balding, very speedy, shifty guys. But when you think about being able to get to that 1,300 yards, you're going to have to throw the ball down the field a little bit more. And I don't know if we were handicapped by our offensive line last year and protection, or if the Big 12 has kind of changed to keep everything underneath. But I don't know if Cameron is able to get the 1,300, even if we do stretch it out. That is a phenomenal year. And obviously we were trying to throw 80-yard bombs every week, twice on Sunday when Browse was here. The big thing for me is to get some of these young guys, maybe Taz Williams and maybe Knighton to play in lieu of some of the depth chart on the wide receiver. When you think about Sawyer Robinson, he's going to be a 4-year senior. You got Hawkins 6-year, Cameron 5, Prentice 5, Trigg. That starting 5, if you will, a ton of depth.
Yeah,
they're not going to play 100% of the snaps. So who comes in as a slot? Will it be Wilson, or will we use Knighton as a slot in some of the light 11 personnel or 10 personnel when we go 4 wide? Because he won 100 in Oklahoma. He was a highly recruit out of Oklahoma, and we want to be able to get the ball in space to these athletes, which is one of the reasons why it was so important to get Hawkins back with that new transfer rule. Um, I think Cameron can get 1,000 yards. I think Hawkins will have anywhere from 600 to 800 yards. Consistency out of the tight end. Trigg is going to have to be a better blocker than he was last year, and he has to be a better catcher. He dropped some crucial passes last year that I think put our offense in some situations where we had to go forward and put our defense in the bind. He's going to have to step up. I know he can do it. Super athletic. He's a mismatch for any linebacker that's covering him in the Big 12. And so if he wants an opportunity to play on Sunday, all he has to do is catch the ball and then go make plays.
Yeah. Big time. And I did just notice as I've got this pulled up, there's an error that I did not intend. I don't think Nate Bennett's going to be the second string quarterback. I do think Walker White is the clear second string quarterback. I meant to have White second. I just mixed that up as I was creating the graphic. But dude, otherwise, like when I was chopping this up, part of why I wanted to go over this with you is I really think you have the ability to like play 6 or 7 of these receivers. So like you're talking about getting the ball to guys in space. Like Cole Wilson came to Baylor anticipating that Hawkins wasn't coming back and he was going to be the guy in the slot. Like he's going to demand touches and I think will get touches. I think Taz Williams, if he's everything he's cracked up to be as a true freshman, will get touches, whether that's maybe he's doing some kick return stuff, maybe he's coming in, if it's 15 snaps a game, like I think we're going to try to get him the ball. Like I just think, again, I don't remember looking at a depth chart in recent memory and thinking, oh, wow, if we lost 1 or 2 of these receivers to injury, I actually think we'd be okay. Granted, I don't think you just replaced Josh Cameron. Like I think that guy's
or Hawkins. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the talent level across the board, this is the best Baylor's had in a long time, in my opinion.
Yeah, talent is great. You got to have production. And right now we have a very veteran-led offense with people who have experience. Prentice is going to be a first-year starter, 4-year senior, first-year starter. So what are we going to get out of him? I think of that list, there could be some guys that move over there and take some of those reps from Prentice if he doesn't come in and do what he needs to do, which I'm really looking forward to it. He played a lot of ball, played in a lot of games at Alabama. And as a speedster, you just don't see a ton of opportunity and a ton of stats and results from that. And so I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not the recruiting guy, but I really would like to see, and we'll get to see this over, hopefully, the 14 or so practices we have left in spring ball, but how Spavital and Sawyer Robertson look and see Prentice as an outside receiver.
Well, and I was going to mention when you talk about Prentice production at Alabama, no shade to Jalen Milroe. The guy's about to get drafted probably very well. I think I'd rather have Sawyer Robertson throwing me the ball. Like just to be honest with you, like I think Sawyer's a guy. We were talking about those spider charts earlier that came out on X, right? The best one for Baylor in the last 11 years was Seth Russell in 2015. The second best looking one was Sawyer Robertson last year. Like the dude. And I think if you think about, I think Baylor's receiving core was not as deep last season, and he still spread out the ball. Like Hal Presley had his share of touchdowns. Monterey Baldwin had a couple of explosive games. Ashton was getting his. Josh was getting his. Like even Bryson, a couple games out of the backfield, had some really nice catches down in the red zone. So like I think Sawyer knows how to get the ball to these guys. If Prentice can get open, if Spavital, I believe most in Spavital's ability to scheme him open. Like the ball's going to be where it needs to be if it's coming from Sawyer Robertson.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of that, talking about all these upperclassmen are coming back, Sawyer has to stay healthy. I mean, when you think about Nate Bennett doesn't have any snaps in college, and neither does Walker White. Walker White came in last year with a guy named Hank Brown as a freshman at Auburn under Derek Nix, who is, trying to figure it out as an offensive coordinator. And, their starting quarterback last year left. He graduated. And so my question for Walker White is, does he want to compete for a spot? Because I think he had an opportunity to compete for a spot against Hank Brown as the starting quarterback for Auburn this year, and he didn't do that. This is the opportunity to do it during spring ball, is to get the snaps and get ahead of the playbook and understand that. But it seemed like his time was very short lived at Auburn, and I know in the transfer era this is going to happen all the time. And so we're lucky to be a benefactor of some of these guys leaving early and coming to Baylor and producing at a high level. But we got to have Sawyer protected by the offensive line, good running, running schemes, as well as getting the ball out of his hands quick, so we can target some of those deep throws and more explosive throws that we've been talking about the last few weeks. But Sawyer Robertson is probably a top 5 quarterback that's coming back to NCAA football this year. And if he plays at the level that he played last year or above, then Baylor football has a really good chance of, not being in conversation, but being in the Big 12 championship.
Big time. I could not agree more. And the thing about Sawyer, he has proven to be durable. Like, he's a tough kid. But at the same time, if you'll recall, when he was coming in and playing some kind of spot duty for Shapen a couple seasons ago, he didn't look so good. Everyone's like, oh, what's his problem? And we found out later, oh, he's hurt. He was dealing with a nagging injury the whole time. So he's a guy that, like, we've seen can play through injury, but definitely, like, as it does with anybody, like, his play suffers, right? And last season, I think, especially down the stretch, you saw healthy, get some games under you, get that momentum. Like, yeah, he's outstanding. And again, we can beat this drum until August when we play Auburn. Like the fact of the matter is, he is the highest returning QBR in the country. Like, he is a top 5 quarterback statistically coming back to college football. It's not a debate. Like, you can debate that all these other cats, Arch Manning, whoever, are going to be better, but, like, statistically speaking, no. Like, Sawyer Robertson is that dude. And, like, yeah, outside of Sam Leavitt and Arizona State, like, Baylor does not really have much, like, I would say, equal competition in terms of offensive talent coming back at the top of the Big 12. I just don't think so. Like, I think Baylor, it's prime time, man.
Well, it's easier to say now because there's so much mix up in college football now with transfers, but you never know how teams reload. Luckily, we get a couple of games in the out of conference play to figure that out and how everybody's going to come back. But there's talent across the Big 12. I do think Arizona State is going to be one. They're losing Scadaboo as a running back who, as great as Leavitt was last year, I think Scadaboo was the bell cow for that offense. And without him, they're going to look different. But I think they've went and got after some people in the transfer portal.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I just Googled it. Kanye Udo is their transfer running back they got from Army. He's a stud. Like, he's a stud.
Texas Tech, lost a great running back in Brooks, and they went and got another running back. And so in the world of, the transfer portal and, you having funds to go out and get talented guys, it's really hard to say from year to year because you don't have where we got Bryce Petty sitting on the bench. Right. And in this era, Bryce Petty, Seth Russell, none of those guys sit on the bench.
No.
They're gone after a year if you can see them for a glimpse. And so to be able to refold and bring back this veteran-led of an offense, I feel confident about that. I just haven't seen anything out of the younger guys. There's a ton of potential. My 7th grade football coach, Buddy Ray, said potential will get me fired. I need you guys to produce. And we're going to have them produce at a high level when they get reps in the game.
Absolutely. Well, man, this was fun batting around some of those thoughts on Baylor starting their spring camp. We'll obviously have more, I'm sure, to talk about next week in regard to spring camp as we get more practices and hear about what's going on, hear about who's making a good impression. Again, you've got 3 freshman receivers that were all highly touted in camp. They're here early. Caden Knighton, the running back, in camp. Like, that all bodes well for this fall. Terrence, maybe that's the last thing we can discuss before we get out of here. What does it mean for those guys to get in here a semester early and get those reps now instead of waiting until late July, early August to get back on the field with Baylor?
I tell my kids all the time about the speed of the game in college. You know, in high school, I played at a small school, so I didn't play at a big 5A school. But DeKalb, Texas, Northeast Texas, we won some ball games when I was in school. But I played very, very hard every Friday night. And when I got to college, that was a Tuesday practice. And then in the NFL, that's a Saturday game. What it feels like, it just gets faster. And so the quicker you can assimilate to the speed of the game and the speed of the play calling, the size, the strength, and go through 8 months of an offseason program of getting stronger, bigger, it can make the world of difference than having true freshmen come in July. I don't think there's any freshmen that come in July these days. But when I was at University of Houston, I was one of two freshmen of the freshman class that came in June. Now everyone gets on campus in January. It's really remarkable how much time they have to play before they have to play. Now it's hard to replicate game speed, and coaches try to keep it fun, and they try to open up practices to get fan engagement. So I really want to know where the future of spring ball is. I know I sent around a couple of texts, this week about what Colorado is trying to do, and Deion Sanders is trying to get other teams to come in to liven up spring ball practice, because it can get very mundane practicing against the same guy over and over again. There's no variety. And yes, we want to get better because iron sharpens iron, but at the end of the day, there's really no stands to fill up. We go have a spring game and there's still only about 2,000 people there. But getting on campus earlier is going to help you learn the playbook quicker, be more confident in seat, and what people don't talk about, to gain the trust of an offensive and defensive coach. If you can get in and they can see how you compete, even if you're not doing it right, that goes a long way.
Yeah, so a couple things to watch for with that as well. Not only the freshmen in camp, we just named several of them, but also we talked several minutes ago about Baylor has kept that single-digit tradition. I believe they've waited until the fall to assign some of those the last couple seasons, but we might see, hey, who knows? Like if all of a sudden Kobe Prentice, he wore 6 last year at Alabama. If all of a sudden they give him a single digit in the next couple weeks, probably a good sign, right? Like that dude's doing what we brought him to Baylor to do, right? So it'll be some interesting talking points as we go along the next couple weeks. Remember, I'm going to put the link up at 8 a.m. tomorrow here on YouTube and on Twitter. Go vote in our round of 32. Vote for Terrence Ganaway. Big upset over RG3. Just one of the matchups in our March Madness bracket of Baylor football players. We will be back next week. Pete Souza will be with us next week. I'm going to try to get at least one more guest as well. We'll have a full episode talking spring camp, looking at who moves on to the Sweet 16 of our bracket. Maybe looking at those QB spider charts and breaking down some quarterback play. We'll have a good time. Terrence, any final words for our friends this week?
No, that's it. I really look forward to looking through that QB chart. I know QBR is one of those stats that we track and we talk a lot. We covered that stat. But, I'll do some research on my end because I really want to see where Sawyer Robinson ranks in passes over 20-plus yards. I know he was really good underneath, very consistent. But to take this offense to the next level and spread it out, he's going to have to be dialed in there. And I think he can be with the confidence of having one full year as the true starter. No one's going to challenge him this offseason. I think, and I'll say it again this fall, no one needs to have a bigger year than Sawyer Robertson in this offense. If he has a great year, we're going to be well within striking distance of another Big 12 championship.
Big time. Well, and I would say too, I think I'm going to make a prediction, and I haven't looked. I bet he completed more passes 20-plus yards than you think he did. I feel like he did. And furthermore, especially comparing him, let's think of great quarterbacks before him. I definitely think he completed more balls downfield than Gary Bohannon did. I definitely think he completed more balls downfield than Charlie Brewer did. I think probably since Seth and Bryce, I would bet he's got the most. But that'll be interesting. We'll cue that up and we'll make that a talking point in the next few weeks. So hey, for my friend Terrence Ganaway here with us, as always, my name's Scotty Swingler. Don't forget, it really does help us. It's not just the obnoxious thing we say because we have to say it. Like, subscribe, comment on videos, share these on Twitter. We'll keep clipping them up and putting them on YouTube as separate clips as well. Share what you like. If there's something you don't like, dude, reach out. DM me on Twitter, please bear W_me. I'm happy to take the feedback. We are just kind of workshopping and figuring this show out because the real stuff begins, of course, when we get to August, and we'll be here with you every week, every Sunday to recap real football games, look ahead to the next football game. That's when the fun begins. So one more time for my friend Terrence Ganaway, my name's Scotty Swingler. This is Rogue Media. Thanks to our sponsors, Dichotomy, Fabled, Primetime Pets, Southern Roots. This is Please Bear With Me. Love you so much. Sick 'em Bears. We'll talk to you next week. Go vote! Round of 32.
We are Rogue Media Sports.